All right, folks, so this is the brand new COROS Pace 2 GPS Sport Watch, which COROS packed with a ton of features, and it comes in at just $200. So what is that $200 going to get you? Well, you're going to get a very lightweight and good-looking watch. It has a full-color display. It has a wrist-based heart rate sensor. It's waterproof down to 50 meters. It comes with a wide variety of sport profiles, including open water swimming as well as triathlon. It pairs to both Bluetooth as well as ANT+ external sensors, including power meters. It also has native Stride foot pod support, so you can collect running power. However, you don't even need the Stride foot pod because the Pace 2 collects running power on the wrist itself. It also has a built-in altimeter, and then you're going to get some pretty phenomenal battery life. That's a lot for the money. So I've been testing the Pace 2 out for the last month or so, and I've got some data to share, including some running, some cycling, and some weight training. And in this video, I'll share what I liked about the Pace 2 as well as what I think can be improved. And if this video does help you out at all, by the way, don't be shy about hitting that like button down below, as it definitely helps the channel out a lot, and I appreciate it. Oh, and by the way, this device was sent out by COROS for review purposes, but this isn't a sponsored video or anything like that. And with that out of the way, let's go ahead and check this thing out. So first off, the Pace 2 is going to be a nice lightweight watch that has a 42mm case with a 1.2-inch full color display, which is going to be easy to read both indoors and outdoors. To interact with the Pace 2, you'll be using COROS's digital dial along with another button, which is generally going to be used as a back button. The digital dial works well, but it does take some getting used to. The issue that I have is that it's a little bit small, so when you're wearing it, it's a little bit challenging to access at times. However, the advantage with COROS advertises, at least, is that when it comes to the digital dial is that you can operate it with just one finger, if that's your fancy. Now, what I do have to say is that it's nice that COROS does provide the ability for you to choose your preferred button orientation. So if you like the buttons above your wrist, you can do that. If you want the buttons closer to your hand, you can do that too. And then they allow you to switch this from your left to your right hand. This particular model comes with a sport loop that uses a Velcro closure, and the Velcro is really secure. COROS actually put some effort into their watch straps, and this may sound silly, but I'm actually kind of a big fan of their straps. The band is nice and breathable, and it has just a little bit of stretch to it, which makes it comfortable as well as being secure, so it has a better chance of capturing a solid heart rate. And we'll get into how accurate that heart rate actually is here when we go over the activities in just a little bit. And then in regards to battery life, COROS advertises that you should be able to get up to 30 hours of GPS usage. And I found that to be pretty darn accurate. And then if you need a little bit more, they also have an ultra mode that you can get up to 60 hours out of it. And then in terms of actually wearing it from day-to-day use, you should be able to get up to 20 hours out of it. And COROS is pretty well known for some pretty phenomenal battery life, so I think those claims hold up very well. In terms of daily tracking, it will track your calories burned, steps, how much time you worked out, as well as floors climbed, and then it'll also have sleep tracking. The sleep tracking provides some basic information, but isn't necessarily as detailed as some others out there, but I did find it to be fairly accurate. You can also integrate with a host of third-party apps, including Strava, Training Peaks, Apple Health, and a bunch more. In terms of external sensors, you'll be able to pair the Pace 2 with both ANT+ as well as Bluetooth accessories like heart rate straps, speed and cadence sensors, and you can also pair it with power meters, and then it also has native Stride foot pod support. Now, the native Stride foot pod support is pretty neat because with a Garmin wearable, you actually had to download a Stride app from the Connect IQ store, and then it'll collect all that running power data. However, with the Pace 2, you just pair up the Stride foot pod like you would pair up any other accessory, and then all that running power data is going to be collected in the COROS app. And by the way, the native Stride foot pod support is also coming to the Apex Pro as well as the Vertex. In terms of activity profiles, the Pace 2 comes with a very decent amount of sport profiles, including all the standard ones you'd expect like running and cycling, both indoors and outdoors, but it also comes with pool swimming, open water swimming, and even a triathlon profile. Then there's also going to be a strength training profile that offers some interesting functionality, which we'll go over just a bit in this video, as well as a gym cardio profile and a GPS cardio workout profile for any outdoor activity that doesn't fall into any of the other buckets. And in this video, I'll be going over how well the Pace 2 did for running, cycling, as well as weight training. And then I'll have a long-term review that'll come out later on down the road where I'll cover a lot more of those other sport profiles. So make sure to subscribe to get a notification when that video comes out. But I'll still be sharing plenty of data in this video, which should give you a pretty good idea of whether this device is going to be right for you. So let's go ahead and first start with running. So on this run, the distance was pretty close to two other test devices, and these are going to be pretty good results, which translated into a fairly similar average pace. What's interesting about the actual GPS tracks is that I found the Pace 2 to actually be a little bit more accurate than the other two test devices when overlaid on Google Maps. So you can see that was very precise in following along the path. So even though there was a slight variance in the total distance, I think the GPS performed really well. The calories burned was a bit lower than what I would think is accurate for a 4-mile run at this intensity, so I think there's that to consider. But for heart rate, it was okay for the most part, but it did vary a little bit here and there at the beginning, and then it had a couple low points in the second half of the run. But overall, not too shabby. And then while we're on the topic of running, let's also talk about running power, which can be collected on the wrist with the Pace 2. This graph shows the running power that the Pace 2 collected versus a Stride FootPod, which is currently one of the leaders in terms of running power. Now, with running power, I'm not necessarily interested in the actual number that the device is outputting, so like 200 watts versus 300 watts, just because the industry standard for those numbers is a little bit here or there. But what I am interested in is the actual trends in running power. So basically, if I see an increase in running power, I want to see both devices increase. If I see a drop, I want to see both devices drop. And what we can see here is that the trends are indeed lining up. The average power numbers are just a little bit off, but that doesn't matter to me all that much, as if we take a look at the trends over time, we see that when the Stride FootPod is reporting a higher output, the Pace 2 is as well. So that's pretty good stuff right there. And then for cycling, on this road bike ride, the distance was spot on and it was nearly identical with 2 other test devices. For elevation gain, it was within the same ballpark, but I'd call that perfectly fine. And then for calories, just like that running example, I thought this was maybe a smidge low for a ride of this intensity. And then for the GPS tracks, everything is going to be super solid and there's nothing that I can complain about. Really good stuff. For heart rate, it was pretty good for the first half of the ride other than a spike at the beginning, but then on the second half, it had some mini spikes that occurred a handful of times. However, in terms of indoor cycling, well, that's exactly what I want to see for heart rate. The Pace 2 was basically identical to both a chest and arm heart rate monitor, and other than the warm-up, which is where all heart rate sensors can take a little bit of time to settle in, everything looks super fine and dandy. For strength training, COROS has put some thought into this activity profile. So when you go to start the strength training activity profile on the Pace 2, it prompts you to choose from a selection of groups of body parts that you intend on working on, and that list includes whole body, shoulders, chest, back, core, legs and hips, and then arms. There are some similarities to Garmin's strength training profile as well as even Samsung's implementation, but there are going to be some key differences. So what I like about the COROS strength training profile is that you'll choose between different muscle groups that you're going to work out. With a Garmin's will actually try to automatically detect what exercise you're doing, which is kind of hit and miss, and I actually have a full video about how all that exactly works, and I'll have that linked down in the description below. And then if you're going to compare it to something like a Galaxy Watch 3, which I'm also currently testing right now, well, Samsung likes to break things down maybe a little bit too much, where they have individual profiles for one particular movement, like arm curls. And that requires a lot of interaction with your device when you're actually working out. The COROS implementation splits the difference by having different muscle groups, which is nice, but then also has different sets as well as rest periods. And then during each set, it has the ability to count reps. When you're done with that particular muscle group, you can choose to end the workout, or you can actually move on to another muscle group if you'd like, and then it'll combine the muscle groups into one workout. And then when you're done, you'll be able to see how many sets you've completed as well as a breakdown per muscle group. But probably the neatest part is that in the COROS app, it shows you a muscle heat map based on that workout. And this can be a great tool to see where you spent your time and maybe where else you can focus on your next workout. I think COROS did a pretty good job with the implementation of strength training. You still will need to interact with the device to start and end sets, as well as move on to different muscle groups if you'd like, but if you're okay with that level of interaction, it can provide some pretty neat data after the fact. In terms of how well the rep counting actually worked, it was pretty close for the most part, but for some reason it came up about 1 rep short on a few occasions. Most times it was just fine, but it was never off by more than 1 rep, which is a good thing. And then in terms of heart rate, well, strength training is probably one of the hardest activities for any wrist-based heart rate sensor to get right, just because there's a lot of wrist flexion and a lot of arm movement, and the Pace 2 is about the same as most others. There were some points where it was close, but then you can see some other areas where it had some significant challenges. Oh, and then one last thing before we wrap up is that there's also going to be training features, including training load, training effect, as well as a recovery visor, and then you can also set up training programs and training plans using the COROS app. So to wrap things up, overall, I like the Pace 2. What I really like about it is the price. For $200, you're getting a nice, lightweight, attractive watch that has some really good GPS and some pretty decent heart rate, but I think there can be a little bit of room for improvement there. But in terms of the rest of the feature set, you're getting a lot for the money. You're getting a lot of external sensor support, including those power meters. You're getting that native Stride foot support, and then you're also going to get really phenomenal battery life. COROS has made some very decent sport watches over the last couple of years, but the one thing that I always brought up was that the price in comparison to some of their other competitors wasn't necessarily on par, but the Pace 2 definitely shatters that mold, and you're gonna definitely get a lot for the money with the Pace 2. Anyhow, if you found this video interesting or useful, make sure to hit that like button down below and also subscribe to the channel for some other long-term reviews that are coming out really soon, like the Galaxy Watch 3. And in the meantime, have fun out there, and we will see you in the next video.